Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Pipe Report. So I went on Austin Peterson's Twitter page, and I saw he made a comment, and then we had another guy make a bunch of comments, and he kept on posting a link to this article right here. NewScientist.com, carrying a gun increases risk of getting shot and killed. I mean, it doesn't look like a lot on here, but he posted this same link over and over and over again. And it kind of made me wonder, did he actually read the study? Or did he just read the article? And based on my research, it appears he only read the article. So let's actually go over the study and let's see if this is actually true. And if it is true, why is it true? The problem with most people these days is that they read a news article that quotes a study and they right away take it as gospel. They right away assume it is fact, but they don't take in the externalities that that study may have. And this is a big problem we have in society nowadays. People don't want to do any research anymore. They hear something and it sounds true, they're going to go with it. They read an article that substantiates it, they're going to go with it. And this is a very, very poor mentality to have. You should always do research into what you are advocating for. I cannot stress that enough. So, let's go over some of the stuff here. Here is the actual, first off, here is the article goes over it, which is what he's been spamming everyone with. And they kind of talk about it, but the study was done by this guy, Charles Branas. And I could have actually just looked and read this article and be like, all right, that's fine. But no, I actually decided to look up the study itself, which is right here. So here indeed is the whole study. So let's go over some of its conclusions and just some stuff in general. First off, it's important to note that we can look at the results. Here is the major, most significant part of the study. All of the people in the group, all of the people in the study were citizens in Philadelphia. That is one city out of the country, an urban city, a city with a high crime rate. Keep that in mind. High crime rate. It's not the whole state of Pennsylvania. It is one city in Pennsylvania. So let's read the first paragraph. Over the study period, our research team was notified of 3,485 shootings of all types occurring in Philadelphia. This translated into an average of 4.77 shootings per day, with a maximum of 21 shootings in a single day and an average of 9 days a year that were free from shootings. From among all these shootings, 3,202 were assaults, 167 were self-inflicted, 61 intentional, 54 were legal interventions, and 2 were of undetermined intent. When we considered only assaults, an average of 4.39 individuals were shot per day in Philadelphia with a maximum of 20 in a single day and an average of 13 days a year with no individual shot. What's important to note from this is that the CDC estimated that 80% of gun homicides in Chicago are gang-related. And here's actually the report from the CDC. So 80% of gun homicides in Chicago are gang-related. Let me ask you a question here. How many gang members do you know that go to their local gun store and actually purchase a gun legally and then use that gun to commit some type of nefarious act? Very few. The reason why is because when you buy a gun, you are on file. And if you use that gun in a crime, you will be arrested. Not only that, many of these gang members already have a record. Many have felonies, and they would not be allowed to buy a gun. So in this case, they receive their guns on the black market and they use them in crime. So it's very hard to establish a link between carrying a gun and it's going to hurt you more. It depends where you are. Demographically speaking, if you are in inner city Chicago, where there is lots of gang-on-gang crime and lots of gun crime despite having overwhelming draconian gun laws, you have a much higher chance of actually getting shot than you do in, say, a suburb area. And that's not me just saying that. That's actually in the study itself. Let's see if I can find it again. But let's go over a little bit more. We'll go down to the study limitations. Study limitations. So, a number of study limitations deserve discussion. Our control population was more unemployed than the target population of Philadelphians that it was intended to represent. Although we did account for employment status in our regression models and our control population was found to be representative of Philadelphians for 5 other indicators, having a preponderance of unemployment among our control participants may mildly erode our study's generalizability. It is also worth noting that our findings are possibly not generalizable to non-urban areas, whose gun injury risks can be significantly different than those of urban centers like Philadelphia. What that means is that the reason there is so much gun-on-gun crime is because it is in inner city Pennsylvania. It is in inner city Philadelphia, where there is gangs, where there are violent crimes that happen. When you try to juxtapose it to that in suburb areas, there is a huge discrepancy in the figures, so much so that is why they did not incorporate that into their study. Again, demographics are very important. Not just who is actually committing the violent act, who is committing the assault, but where the assault is happening. This guy, he just likes to keep posting the same thing over and over. I guarantee you he did not actually read the study. I guarantee you he only read this article. Did not actually do his research into the study. If he did, he would not be advocating the way he is. He would have fessed up and said, you know what? There is a lot of factors that determine that, a lot of facets that made this conclusion possible. And we have to be careful not to make just outlandish presumptions on it without actually going over the statistics and why statistics indicate what they do. But let's continue on with the study. So, certain other variables that may have confounded association between gun possession and assault were also beyond the scope of our data collection system and therefore were not included in our analysis. For instance, any prior or regular training with guns was a potentially important confounding variable that we did not measure and whose inclusion could have affected our findings. What that means is that those who are trained in the use of guns, for instance, if you do a Class 1 concealed carry permit, you actually have to be trained in how to use a gun and the gun safety, how to unload it, load it, things of that nature, and you have to actually be a decent marksman. They make you shoot. What this says that they were not able to determine, or rather they did not put this important factor in their study, that those that are trained in the use of firearms, especially handguns, could potentially and most likely skew the research, skew the study. Because those that are trained in firearms know how to use them. They don't jump the gun. I do agree with this kid to some regards that if you put somebody that has no gun training whatsoever and you give them a gun for them to carry and they walk down the gang infested areas of Philadelphia, chances are there is going to be an incident with a firearm, because chances are he is going to be jumped, he's going to be attacked, he's going to be assaulted, and he has a gun and he thinks he can handle himself, and the gun is going to go off and there's going to be an incident. That is why it's imperative that you don't just give everyone guns without proper training. What's more is that 98.4% of mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. Well, that is why we see states like Illinois and California, despite having draconian gun laws, still have the highest gun crime rates in the country. Because here's what you have to understand. If you are going to shoot up a place, the first place you're going to look is for a place that doesn't have any guns. Those are called gun-free zones. Those are called soft targets. And the reason you are going to do that is because you understand that if you go there, the chances of you receiving any type of resistance from those with a gun is next to nil. So you can dish out your terror all you want, and you will be able to kill way more people than you would if you, for instance, went to a gun show where there are lots and lots of people at gun shows. You would never go there to shoot up the place because you wouldn't last long. That is why it's important that we get rid of gun-free zones. Alright, where are we now? We also did not account for the potential of reverse causation between gun possession and gun assault. Although our long list of confounders may have served to reduce some of the problems posed by reverse causation, future case control studies of guns and assault should consider instrumental variables techniques to explore the effects of reverse causation. It was worth noting, however, that the probability of success with these techniques is low. Where was I at? Finally, our results could have been affected by misclassification of gun possession status. Because of prior discussion and likely levels of misclassification, we concentrated on undetected gun possession. The ensuing sensitivity analysis demonstrated odds ratio estimates that increased and decreased in statistical significance but did not drop below 1, even when challenged with high levels of misclassification. Thus, even after simulating high levels of misclassification bias, a net protective effect of gun possession was not evident. What that basically is saying is that it is hard to actually determine what classifies as gun possession. So they were not able to fully articulate, for lack of a better phrase, articulate what exactly constitutes gun possession. But let's go up a little bit here. Prior case control studies. A second improvement was our use of an incidence density sampling framework to select control participants. This allowed us to make a judgment about the risk associated with gun possession proximal to the shooting event itself. Prior case control work has involved less proximal gun exposure measures, owning, purchasing, or having a gun in the home. These measures leave open to question the actual risk that a gun may pose for an individual concurrent with the time they were shot. That is, someone may have a gun in their home, may have purchased a gun, or may own a gun, but without knowledge of whether that gun was in their possession at the time they were shot. The possibility that they have been misclassified as being exposed to a gun when in fact they are not is a potential bias. So what this means basically is that they cannot properly quantify whether or not the person that was shot actually had a gun on him. They cannot quantify whether that gun was one of the reasons why he or she was involved in an assault that brought a gun, because he could have had the gun in his home. The locality of the actual assault could have been far away from the person with a gun, and therefore there is a bias. They cannot properly quantify that. This bias erodes the ability to speculate on plausible causal mechanisms other than to say that general access to a gun over some amount of space or time is a risk factor. So since they cannot properly quantify whether or not that gun was responsible for the assault, they just are assuming that general access to a gun over some amount of space or time is a risk factor. That's also important information here. Finally, as this was a case control study, we had the advantage of being able to statistically adjust for numerous confounders of the relationship between gun possession and gun assault. These confounders included important individual level factors that did not change with time, such as having a high-risk occupation, limited education, or an arrest record. Other confounders that we included were situational factors that could have influenced the relationship under study. Substance abuse, being outside, having others present, and being in neighborhood surroundings that were impoverished or busy with illegal drug trafficking. I think this is probably the most important part of the study, because what this tells us that if you are a person and you are in a situation that has a lot of criminality, a lot of criminal acts happening there, such as if you are alone at 2 a.m. in the middle of a gang neighborhood, chances are you are going to be assaulted. Chances are you're going to be hurt in some way. So it is important to really explain, to really elaborate that if you go into a dangerous environment, chances are something bad is going to happen with you. You have to be smart. I'm not going to put a gun on, walk to my local gang neighborhood at 2 a.m. because the chances of me being attacked is probably very high, which they are saying here. They included those. This is important, very important information. I think most people would agree with me that if you are in an area with high crime, there's a good chance that you might be attacked, that you may be assaulted. It's probably best to stay away from that high crime. So when this kid is talking about this study, what he should have said was, this article right here, I think he said 4-1 somewhere in it. He basically should have said that this is only true in urban areas, especially areas with gang crime, or areas that have a lot of criminal acts happening, areas that have drug trafficking, areas that have prostitution. Basically, any area that has a high crime rate, you have a much greater chance of being assaulted or dying from carrying a gun than you would in other areas. And I think everyone would agree with that. Everyone would agree with that. That is why the highest amount of crime rates happen in areas that are heavily populated, especially areas of gangs. So I don't think anyone disagrees with that. But I think he's trying to basically say that this statistic quantifies the whole country. No, that ain't true at all. Because this study even said that it's not taking into account suburban areas because they could be drastically different. And that is indeed true. I think we all know that. Let's see here. I think I had a couple more to go over. After we adjusted for numerous confounding factors, gun possession by urban adults was associated with significantly increased risk of being shot in an assault. On average, guns did not seem to protect those who possessed them from being shot in assault. Although successful defensive gun uses can and do occur, the findings of this study do not support the perception that such successes are likely. So basically what I want to take away from here is what I kind of just said, the first sentence here. Gun possession by urban adults was associated with significantly increased risk of being shot in assaults. All urban areas, since they do, just by statistics, have higher crime rates. If you are carrying a gun in a neighborhood that is composed of crime, there is a greater chance that you're going to be attacked, and you may actually kill someone, or you may be killed because you are carrying a gun. And I don't think anyone disagrees with that. But that is only for urban areas. That is only for areas with high amount of gang-on-gang crime. It doesn't mean that carrying a gun in a suburban area or carrying a gun in a conservative state, it doesn't mean that you are automatically going to die. It doesn't mean that you have a much greater chance of being injured. Not even close. It depends. Demographics are important. So, I guess that's kind of basically it. Here's a good graph, too, to go over some stuff. Like gun death, suicide, you can see takes up the majority of it. Gang-related, next majority. Other, self-defense, accident. So it's very important to discuss statistics. It's very important to know what you are talking about, to know what a study actually says before you just try to advocate that, oh, look at this study. This means that you are a lot more likely to be hurt if you are carrying a gun. No, it doesn't mean that. In certain areas, yes, of course, and we all agree with that. So, how can we fix this? Well, we have to understand that since the majority of gun deaths are gang-related, and the majority of gun homicides are gang-related, and the majority of gun deaths are from suicide, we do need better mental health outreach. We do need background checks, and yes, there are background checks. People want to point out this loophole. There isn't a background check law. Yes, there is. I guarantee you go to an area and buy a gun, you're going to get a background check. So, but I think the most important one is to get rid of gun-free zones. Because as we know, 98.4% of mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. And if you really want to stop mass shootings, then you really need to get rid of gun-free zones. And it's important to note, too, that actually gun crime has actually been decreasing over the years, and gun ownership has been going up. So you could say that gun crimes and gun ownership are inversely proportional. That is, if gun ownership goes down, gun crimes go down, and vice versa. You could actually make that claim, just because if we're basing it on attrition, we can make that claim. So it's very important to know what you're talking about before you try to make yourself sound smart. But yeah. Whoever you are, I can't read that name. I guess try to, read the study. Just read the study next time, because you'll learn a lot from it. And I'm done.